Hello.
Hello, dear colleagues, dear audience of Media Inform TV channel. I have a privilege to introduce my today's special guest, Mr. Gennady, who is one of the prominent activists of, let's say, Euro-Atlantic movement in Europe. Good afternoon, Mr. Fechlinger. Thank you very much for joining us today. Mr. Fechlinger, so let's talk about a very important topic which now is on the agenda. So now Ukraine is waiting for a counter-offensive from Ukrainian military, and Ukrainians hope that Ukrainian territory will be taken back from Russia, which occupied part of Ukrainian territories during the last 9 years. So, what are expectations among Europeans, and how can you assess actually these expectations?
We hope that the counteroffensive will be very successful, that all of Ukraine, including Crimea, will be liberated, and that Ukraine will join NATO. This is the way for lasting, sustainable peace in Europe. Russia must be driven out of all the occupied territories of Ukraine immediately, and especially the city of Mariupol must be liberated.
Mr. Fechlinger, probably you heard that yesterday in the evening, very how to say, very scared video was published, how actually Russian troops, they beheaded Ukrainian warrior, the member of Ukrainian armed forces, and obviously the Special Secret Service of Ukraine will, SBU, will research this case, investigate this case, but know when it happened. But this video was published, and actually we have now several cases where when Russia is behaving like ISIS, so which, let's say, repercussions do you foresee from the West, how the West is going to change its behavior towards Russia? Will the West supply more weapons to Ukraine? So how these videos will affect the West, because West can't ignore such human rights abusement.
It's a terrible, terrible act of state terrorism, and it should underline the case for declaring Russia a terrorist federation, a terrorist state, because actually they are a terrorist state, obviously, all the time already, and that is absolutely necessary to make that very clear. I hope it will affect the West insofar, because up to now we have been not really supplying as much weapons as we could. We could give much more weapons, and we have not done that, unfortunately, because we have not delivered enough tanks, we have not delivered enough rockets, and we have not supported Ukraine as it deserves. Yeah? And I hope this will changing now. Together with the success in the offensive, I hope also that the modest level of supplies will really be similar to what we have seen in World War II, when the Soviet Union was supplied extensively and tremendously by America. And we have the same name for the program. It's called Lend-Lease. But the dimensions are really much lower and much more modest than compared what was possible even during the World War II for the Soviet Union on behalf of America. So I call for a similar level of effort. Yeah? We have to provide the whole arsenal of democracy for Ukraine. And it's now the decisive time. Because I wonder, what is the whole expectation of the Western leadership of President Biden? Does he want this war to continue for the next 10 years? Does he want an endless war in Ukraine for decades to come? It's it's not human. The way to win this war and to end this war is by victory. So victory requires the military support, because it's anyhow the Ukrainian heroes who are ready to sacrifice their life, because we are not sending our soldiers. But at least we could send more money and more weapons, because we have it and we can produce it faster. And obviously, it's a competition in the military technology field. And we have by far the capacity to win that effectively. And I'm very disappointed, actually, with the Modest. We had all these debates. It took 1 year to get the mix going. It took half a year, basically, to get the first tanks going, and so on and so on. We could have given all these things already in the first months of the war, and so many people would be still alive. And now, if the counteroffensive is not successful due to President Biden's weak support and Chancellor Scholz and weak support, it's on them to blame. It's not the heroes of Ukraine which have to be blamed. It's the weak military defense support from the West, because we have now given a significant number of tanks, but we have so many more in Europe, and we don't need them anymore when Ukraine wins. Who will attack? Nobody will attack Europe but Russia. It's the only hostile power. If once it's defeated, we will be safe for the long term in Europe. And so it's Ukraine who defends all of us. So we have to give you all the tanks we have.
Mr. Peckinger, I recently read an article, I think in the Washington Post or some other newspaper, and according to the journalist information, United States, Germany, and I don't know, some other third state is opposing Ukraine to join NATO. So actually,
oh no.
Actually Ukraine won't receive a green light to join NATO in, let's say, in foreseeable future.
That's a very big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But please, it's a very big mistake. We have since 2008, the big tragedy of the war, 2008, 2014, 2022, is exactly about this question. Because if we had allowed a NATO accession trajectory in 2008 already, then there would be no war in 2008, no war in 2014, no war in 2022 ongoing. Because it's very clear, the Russians, as you see how weak they are, in reality, they are not a superpower. They have a lot of energy resources. That's the only thing they have. And they have a lot of brutality to send their own young people in this terrible war of attrition. But obviously, they are not a military superpower. They are in no way organizationally and civilizationally possible to defeat Ukraine and the West at the moment. And they have never been. So we could have easily deterred them, because the whole logic of the Cold War is deterrence. Deterrence means we are united, we are strong, we are nuclear armed, and we will never be attacked by anybody. And the Russians would have never attacked Ukraine if we had allowed NATO membership. So not granting NATO membership now, I see, the first step is it's called a membership action plan. So in July, in Vilnius, at the next summit, Ukraine must get this membership action plan. And 2024, at the NATO summit in Washington, then Ukraine must be a full member of the alliance, and you will live in peace forever. And as well, the whole of Europe will live in peace forever.
Yeah, but why do you think Western main countries, and we understand that United States and Germany, there are two main countries which, along as France, they define the way how, let's say, Euro-Atlantic policy should develop. Why they are very reluctant to give a precise sign for Ukraine that Ukraine is going to join NATO, let's say, after Ukrainian victory. So we haven't received any guarantee from our allies regarding membership.
Yeah, why? Because the Russians are systematically undermining our political system since decades. And the truth is, especially since 2008, and the Russians have systematically undermined the Conservative Party of the United States, the Republicans. They have systematically bought influence there, and they have undermined our resolve in that question, in that essential question. And the Democrats are, from the tendency and from their character, always a more appeasement-oriented party, and they are running the country now. So in America, we have the big supporters of NATO enlargement. Don't forget, it was the Republican Party of Reagan and George Bush which has extended NATO. It was especially George Bush in 2004 which allowed so many countries in, and that was very important. That was the key moment. And then the Democrats under Obama were very much against NATO enlargement. And what then the Russians have systematically done, they have undermined the Republican Party. And one of the key preparations in France and Germany of this war was obviously to support the SPD in Germany, because the SPD's victory in the September election was one of the instruments of the pre-war preparations in 2021. And so we have this problem, and we have to, how can we do it? How can we win it? Ukraine must have a very pro-European stance and build an alliance with Poland and the Baltic countries and the Nordic countries who are fully supporting you, and must push very hard for NATO membership now.
Mr. Fecklinger, you try to raise awareness among, let's say, European countries to foster the membership for Ukraine in NATO and the European Union, and you're going to organize a big press conference in Vienna in the on the May 10 this year, and you invited several MPs from only from Ukraine but from Kosovo to attend this press conference. Could you please tell a bit about this press conference, why this idea came in your mind, and what should we expect from this press conference?
Very good. You know, I'm supporting NATO enlargement because deterrence works and NATO works. And that's why I'm so happy that Finland is now a member, and Sweden will be very soon, because there will be a yes in May and June, and it will be already at the Vilnius summit. And today the president of the United States is in Ireland. So I hope that they will also join. And also the two remaining neutral islands in Cyprus and Malta, I hope they will also join. And then Austria is left. And I'm very much here as an Austrian advocating for Austria to join NATO, and obviously also for Kosovo and Bosnia, because these are the two countries we have liberated and we have saved from genocide in the 90s, and they both are guaranteed already by NATO, so it's relatively easy to bring them into NATO, and of course Ukraine. So my focus is of course for Ukraine, Kosovo, Bosnia and Austria, and I have organized on the 10th of May in Vienna a press conference. I invited the leading MP from Odessa, Mr. Goncharenko, and also the MP for the Defense Committee for the Parliamentarian Assembly, Mr. Husseini from Kosovo. And there will be hopefully other representatives who are coming. And then we will make the case for Ukraine in NATO, in neutral Austria. And we will say neutrality is treason, it's unacceptable. And Austrian neutrality is not a role model for Ukraine, as some politicians from Austria have suggested in the past. But Ukraine is only safe once it's in NATO. Because if we don't give the security guarantee of full NATO membership to Ukraine, maybe Russia will come back next year or in 2 years or something else. Yeah. So only inside NATO there will be lasting security for Ukraine. And that must be made very clearly at this event. And we must destroy the myth of neutrality, because it's not by coincidence that Austria has not delivered any weapons, has not delivered any ammunition, is very, very reluctant. And even several members of the Austrian parliament have ran out of the meeting when Mr. Zelensky, the president, has addressed now 2 weeks ago in the parliament of Austria. They simply ran away out of the place, yeah? And not attended out of protest. So you see, Austrian neutrality is in reality a cover for money laundering, for treason, and for lack of real support for Ukraine, and it must be finished.
Mr. Fecklinger, thank you very much for your dedication to this question. You're a very good friend for Ukraine. You stand for Ukrainian interest, and this is very important. Mr. Günther Fecklinger, the chairman of Europe for Tax Reforms, one of the co-founders of the organization Vienna Goes Europe, Montenegro Goes Europe, etc. So a great expert in European economic political affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Fecklinger, for joining our TV channel today. Thank you, dear audience, for being with us.
Slava Ukraine.
Героям слава.